Eala seeks revenge against younger, familiar foe in Qatar Open. Eala hopes to have a revenge game against younger and familiar foe Teresa Valentova in their WTA 1000 Qatar Open opening round meeting on Monday, February 9th. The two met nearly 3 months ago in the Japan Women's Open, where Valentova dominated Eala in a 6-1, 6-2 decision in their round of 32 tussle. Hailing from Prague, 18-year-old Valentova is currently ranked 44th, her career high. Valentova entered the main draw of Qatar Open after a dominant performance against Irina Rodionova and Eala Seidel, whom she both overcame in 3 sets. The Qatar Open will be Eala's 5th tournament in the 2026 season after her respective stints in the Kuyang ASB Classic, Australian Open, Philippine Women's Open, and Abu Dhabi Open. Recently, Eala ended her Abu Dhabi Open journey after a tough 3-6 loss against Russia, Ekaterina Alexandrova. After her semi-finals run with fellow Southeast Asian and Indonesian rising star Janice Tien in the doubles stint of the same tourney, Eala is not listed in the doubles action for the Qatar version. Eala's reckoning under Doha lights. The night air in Doha always carried a hush, as if the desert itself leaned in to listen. Beneath the floodlights of the Khalifa International Tennis Complex, the court gleamed like a promise freshly made, and a debt long remembered. Alexandra Eala stood at the baseline, fingers flexing around the grip, eyes steady. The Qatar Open had a way of turning matches into mirrors, reflecting not just form, but history. Across the net waited a younger foe, familiar in the way old songs are familiar, the melodies learned early and never quite forgotten. They had met before, when Eala was still discovering the weight of expectation and the sharpness of professional edges. That night had ended in frustration, a loss that lingered, not because of the scoreline, but because it arrived too early, too raw. The opponent had played free, fearless, and the crowd had sensed a future rushing forward. Eala had walked away knowing she'd been outpaced not by skill alone, but by timing. Now, timing had come back around. The warm-up strokes cracked through the cool evening. Eala's forehand hummed with intent, compact, disciplined, patient. She wasn't here to chase ghosts, she was here to test the work. Years of mornings when the court felt too big and evenings when the margins felt too small had sculpted her game. She'd learned when to press and when to wait. She'd learned that revenge, when it mattered, wasn't loud. It was precise. The coin toss finished. Applause rose and settled. The chair umpire's voice floated, ceremonial. Play. The first games unfolded like a chess opening. The younger opponent struck early, stepping inside the baseline, redirecting pace with audacity. A drop shot kissed the tape and died. The crowd stirred. Eala absorbed it all, moving with economical grace, returning deep, refusing the invitation to rush. She watched patterns, noted tendencies. The match was already talking to her. Down a break, Eala paused at the towel rack. She closed her eyes for a beat, breathed, and remembered a lesson learned the hard way. Panic narrows vision, patience widens it. When she returned to the line, her serve found corners, then followed with a forehand that landed heavy and deep, pushing her opponent back where creativity costs more. Momentum shifted not with fireworks, but with friction. Longer rallies favored Eala's steadiness. She changed heights, spun angles, asked questions. The younger player answered brilliantly, until the questions stacked. A backhand drifted long. A second serve sat up and paid the price. Break back. The set tightened. At 5-all, Eala stepped in on a return, took time away, and threaded a winner past a desperate lunge. She didn't celebrate. She nodded as if to herself, acknowledging a checkpoint passed. The set slipped into her grasp on the next game, sealed by an ace down the tee that surprised even her. One setup, the air felt different. Less hush, more hum. But familiarity cuts both ways. The opponent had learned too. The second set began with renewed aggression, earlier contact, sharper angles. The court tilted. Eala found herself scrambling, defending corners, her breath quickening. 2 break points. The crowd leaned forward again. On the second, Eala took a risk. A kick serve climbed high, followed by a daring forehand down the line. It clipped the paint. The roar wasn't for the shot alone. It was for the nerve behind it. She held. What followed was tennis stripped to its essentials. Courage versus control. The younger player attacked, fearless, sometimes brilliant. Eala countered with clarity, choosing moments, measuring costs. A rally stretched past 20 shots, legs burning, lungs protesting. Eala changed direction at the last instant, wrong-footing her opponent, and finished with a volley that felt like a punctuation mark. Still, the set slipped away. A net cord, a mistimed step, and suddenly it was one set all. The match had found its balance. Between sets, Eala sat quietly. She thought of the first time she'd walked onto a big court, the way the lights had felt like an interrogation. She thought of losses that taught her how to lose properly, by listening. The court had spoken tonight. She understood. The decider began with purpose. Eala varied her serve, pulling wide, jamming the body, daring the returner to choose wrong. She stepped forward on short balls, not recklessly, but decisively. The younger opponent's shoulders tightened. The fearless swing met resistance now, not from the court, but from doubt. At 3-1, Eala broke with a sequence that would replay in her mind later, a looping forehand that dragged her opponent wide, a sudden flat backhand into the open court, and a finishing volley she'd practiced 1,000 times. She allowed herself a small smile, earned, not performative. The finish was never going to be tidy. The opponent fought, saving match points with flashes of brilliance. The crowd applauded generously, sensing the arc of a rivalry still writing itself. On the final point, Eala returned deep, traded patiently, then waited for the opening she knew would come. When it did, she didn't hesitate. The ball found the line. The match ended not with a scream, but with a release. Handshake. Respect. Applause that felt like acknowledgement rather than astonishment. As Eala walked off, she glanced once more at the court. Revenge, she knew now, wasn't about settling a score. It was about returning to the same place as a different person. Stronger, steadier, ready. Under the Doha lights, the past had finally loosened its grip, and the future, wide as the desert night, beckoned. Desert echoes, Eala's quiet revenge in Doha. The court in Doha looked calm, almost forgiving, but Alexandra Eala knew better. The Qatar Open had a way of remembering everything. Every misstep, every unfinished point, every loss that still lived rent-free in a player's mind. As she bounced the ball at the baseline, the past echoed louder than the crowd. Across the net stood a younger opponent, familiar in the most unsettling way. Not a stranger. Not a rival born of headlines. This was someone Eala had faced before, back when her career was still stretching into itself, back when belief sometimes arrived late. That earlier match had ended with Eala watching the last ball sail past her reach, the handshake brief, the lesson long-lasting. The younger foe had walked away smiling, fearless, unburdened by memory. Eala had carried that memory ever since.